Armin had always been known in his neighborhood as a quiet, dependable young man. He was not flashy, nor did he seek attention, but there was something in his presence that made people feel safe. Everyone who knew him could sense that he had a strong sense of loyalty and an unshakable moral compass. From a young age, he had learned that standing up for others was not a choice, it was a responsibility. Lena, on the other hand, was different. She was lively, smart, and full of energy, the only daughter of Mrs. Farah, a wealthy and respected woman in their city. Lena had grown up with every comfort imaginable, but she lacked one thing that Armin could understand well: the knowledge that some people might not act fairly. While Lena was protected by wealth and status, she sometimes found herself in situations where her charm or naivety drew attention she did not want. It was a bright, sunny afternoon when the story of Armin's courage began. A school event was being held at the local community center. Parents, students, and teachers gathered to celebrate the achievements of the students in a small ceremony filled with smiles, speeches, and laughter. Lena was excited, dressed in a colorful dress that swayed as she moved. She ran through the crowd talking to her friends, waving at familiar faces, and feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Armin had been invited by Mrs. Farah, who trusted him completely, though he had never sought such invitations. He attended quietly, observing the event and making sure everything ran smoothly. His eyes often wandered toward Lena, not in a way that was inappropriate, but because he cared for her safety. He knew that in a crowd, even in a friendly environment, accidents could happen, or someone could try to take advantage of a careless moment. As the event continued, a group of older boys known for causing trouble in the neighborhood began to gather near the edge of the crowd. Their eyes were fixed on Lena, and their whispers carried a sense of menace that only Armin seemed to notice immediately. At first he watched quietly, hoping that the boys would leave on their own. But when he saw them inch closer, he realized that Lena could be in real danger. Lena, lost in her excitement, did not notice the boys until one of them stepped forward and tried to grab her wrist. Startled, she pulled back, her eyes wide with fear. "Let go of me," she shouted, her voice trembling slightly. But the boy only laughed, trying to pull her closer. In that moment, time seemed to slow down for Armin. Without a second thought, he stepped in. He placed himself between Lena and the boys, his posture calm but firm. "Back off," he said in a voice that carried authority. It was not a loud shout, but there was a weight to it that demanded attention. The boys laughed, at first thinking it was a joke. But when Armin did not budge, when he stood steady and unafraid, their laughter faded into uncertainty. "You don't understand," one of the boys said mockingly. "We're just having some fun." "This is not fun," Armin replied, his eyes sharp and unwavering. "Leave her alone." The boys, still confident in their numbers, decided to push forward. One of them lunged at Armin, but he sidestepped quickly, using his strength and balance to stay in position without hurting anyone unnecessarily. It was clear he was not there to fight, but to protect. Despite being outnumbered, he managed to keep Lena safe, deflecting every attempt to get past him. Mrs. Farah, who had been watching from the sidelines, felt her heart pound in her chest. She could not believe what she was seeing. Her daughter, who she had tried so hard to shield from harm, was standing with a young man who refused to let even a scratch come near her. She had heard stories of bravery before, but seeing it in real life was something entirely different. Her hands trembled slightly and she took a step closer, wanting to intervene but knowing it might make things worse. The struggle continued for a few tense moments, and then, as if the universe itself recognized the courage in Armin, the boys began to hesitate. They realized that this was not going to be easy, and the calm determination in his eyes made them reconsider their choices. One by one, they started to back away, muttering excuses and trying to save face. When the last boy finally turned and ran, Lena let out a sigh of relief, her small body shaking from adrenaline. Armin, too, felt the rush of the moment. He could feel the strain in his muscles, the sting from where a couple of the boys had landed blows, but it was minor compared to the relief of knowing Lena was safe. "Are you okay?" he asked, kneeling slightly to meet her eyes. Lena nodded, her hands gripping his shoulders in a mix of gratitude and lingering fear. "Yes, thanks to you," she whispered. Mrs. Farah stepped forward then, her expression a mixture of astonishment, gratitude, and something deeper she did not yet understand. She placed a gentle hand on Armin's shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know how to repay you for what you just did." Armin shook his head modestly. "I didn't do it for thanks, ma'am. I just couldn't let her get hurt." That night, Mrs. Farah could not stop thinking about what had happened. She thought about Armin's calm demeanor, the way he had put himself in danger without hesitation, and the loyalty and courage that shone in every action. She admired him not only for his bravery, but also for his humility. Unlike many people, she knew, he had not sought attention or praise. He had acted out of genuine care and respect. Over the next few days, Mrs. Farah found reasons to speak with Armin more often. She would invite him for tea, ask about his family, or simply talk about the event. Each conversation revealed more of his character, his kindness, his patience, and the quiet strength that made him someone others could rely on. Meanwhile, Lena could not stop talking about Armin. She described the way he had stood between her and the boys, how calm and confident he had been, and how safe she had felt in his presence. To her, Armin was not just a protector. He was a hero in the truest sense. The bond between Armin and Lena grew naturally, based on trust and mutual respect. But Mrs. Farah's admiration for Armin deepened in a different way. She began to see him not just as a protector for her daughter, but as someone who could bring balance and strength into her own life. In her eyes, he embodied qualities she valued most: courage, loyalty, and a sense of responsibility that was rare to find. Armin himself did not notice the subtle shift at first. He remained focused on Lena's safety and well-being, unaware of how Mrs. Farah's perception of him was changing. To him, the right thing was always to act with integrity, to help where he could, and to ensure that those around him were safe. As days turned into weeks, Armin's actions became part of the daily routine. Whenever Lena was in a situation that might be risky, he was there quietly, watching, ready to step in if needed. Mrs. Farah would often observe from a distance, marveling at his dedication. She started to speak about him with friends, describing how he had stood between her daughter and danger without fear. The story of that day spread through the neighborhood. People admired Armin, not for his strength alone, but for the way he had acted selflessly. He had earned a reputation as someone who could be trusted, someone who would take responsibility even when it was difficult. For Lena, Armin became more than just a protector. He became a symbol of safety and courage. She knew that no matter what happened, he would be there. And for Mrs. Farah, he became a source of quiet admiration and emotional reflection, someone who reminded her of values she cherished, but sometimes found lacking in the world around her. Armin's bravery had set the stage for events that would follow. What began as a simple act of protection had become a turning point, not only for Lena but also for her mother. In that moment, the seeds of deep admiration, complex emotions, and unspoken bonds had been planted. And though Armin himself had no idea of the profound impact he had made, his actions that day were already changing lives, setting the foundation for a story of loyalty, courage, and unexpected connections that would test the hearts of all involved. After the incident at the school event, life seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm. Yet something had quietly changed in the lives of Armin, Lena, and her mother, Mrs. Farah. The memory of that day lingered like a soft echo, shaping thoughts, feelings, and the way they related to each other. While Lena felt a new sense of safety and trust, Mrs. Farah's thoughts kept returning to the courage and devotion of the young man who had risked his own safety for her daughter. Armin, as always, remained humble. He did not seek recognition or praise, but he had noticed a subtle shift in the way Mrs. Farah looked at him. She would watch him attentively during conversations, her eyes reflecting appreciation and something deeper, an unspoken curiosity about his character. Though Armin sensed her admiration, he focused on practical matters, ensuring Lena felt safe, helping her with small tasks, and being present whenever she needed guidance or support. One afternoon, Mrs. Farah invited Armin to her home for tea. The invitation was casual, but it carried a warmth and sincerity that Armin could not ignore. He arrived promptly, greeted politely, and observed the elegant surroundings of her home. Mrs. Farah welcomed him with a gentle smile, leading him into a quiet room where the sunlight streamed through the windows, creating a calm and peaceful atmosphere. "I wanted to thank you again," Mrs. Farah said as they sat down, her voice soft but steady. "What you did for Lena, words cannot express how grateful I am." Armin shook his head modestly. "I did what anyone should do," he replied. "I just couldn't let anything happen to her. That's all." Mrs. Farah studied him for a moment, noticing the sincerity in his eyes, the honesty in his words. There was no arrogance, no expectation of reward. He had acted purely out of concern for Lena's well-being, and that touched her deeply. "You have a rare kind of heart, Armin," she said quietly. "Not many people would act the way you did." Armin smiled faintly, feeling a little awkward under her intense gaze. "I believe in doing what's right," he said simply, "especially when someone is in danger." Mrs. Farah leaned back slightly, her mind wandering to memories of her own past. She thought of her late husband, a man of integrity and courage, and of the challenges she had faced raising Lena on her own. There had been moments when she wished for someone like Armin in her life, not just as a protector for her daughter, but as a person who could provide support, strength, and trustworthiness. Seeing him there, quietly listening, considerate, and genuinely caring, stirred emotions she had not expected to feel. Over the next few weeks, Mrs. Farah found herself seeking Armin's company more often. She would ask him to come over for tea, invite him to join small family gatherings, and engage him in conversations about life, education, and the community. Each encounter revealed more of his character. He was patient, thoughtful, and always attentive to others. He spoke little of himself, yet his words carried wisdom and a sense of responsibility that impressed Mrs. Farah deeply. Armin, for his part, remained focused on Lena. He enjoyed spending time with her, offering guidance when needed, and ensuring she felt secure in any situation. He noticed Mrs. Farah's warmth and attentiveness, but he interpreted it as natural gratitude from a mother whose daughter he had protected. He had no desire to overstep boundaries, and he respected Mrs. Farah's position and feelings. Lena, however, began to notice subtle changes too. She saw her mother speaking about Armin more often, asking about his life, his dreams, and his experiences. Lena felt a mix of emotions, grateful that her mother appreciated someone so dependable, yet slightly uneasy at how much attention Mrs. Farah was giving him. Despite this, she trusted Armin completely and knew that his intentions were pure. One weekend, Mrs. Farah invited Armin to join a small family picnic in a nearby park. It was a casual event, with Lena laughing and playing with her friends, and the atmosphere was filled with warmth and joy. Armin helped set up the picnic, carrying baskets, arranging blankets, and making sure everything was in order. Mrs. Farah observed him, impressed not only by his helpfulness but also by his quiet demeanor and respectful attitude. During the picnic, Mrs. Farah began sharing stories of her own life with Armin. She spoke about her late husband, the challenges of raising Lena alone, and the difficulties she had faced managing her career and household. Armin listened attentively, never interrupting, offering thoughtful comments when appropriate. His presence was calming, and Mrs. Farah found herself talking more openly than she had in years. "You have a remarkable way of listening, Armin," she said, smiling softly. "It's as if you truly care about what people say, not just about the words, but about the feelings behind them." Armin shrugged lightly, feeling slightly embarrassed by the praise. "I believe everyone deserves to be heard," he replied, "especially people who are important to me." Mrs. Farah's heart skipped a beat at his words. While she understood that he meant Lena, she could not help but feel a deeper connection forming. His kindness, attentiveness, and selflessness resonated with her in ways she had not anticipated. It was not love in the traditional sense, but an admiration and emotional attachment that grew stronger with each interaction. As days turned into weeks, the bond between Armin and Mrs. Farah strengthened, though it remained subtle. She began inviting him to help with small tasks around the house, discussing important family matters, and even seeking his advice on decisions related to Lena's education and well-being. Armin offered guidance with care and respect, always mindful of his role and the boundaries he needed to maintain. Lena continued to admire Armin for his courage and loyalty. She often spoke to her mother about how safe and happy she felt with him around, reinforcing Mrs. Farah's admiration. Yet, Mrs. Farah's feelings became more complex. She realized that her admiration was evolving into a desire for closeness. Beyond the usual gratitude one shows to a family friend or helper, she found herself thinking about him at unexpected times, imagining how life might be different with someone like Armin by her side, someone who embodied the values she cherished most. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Mrs. Farah invited Armin to her home for tea once again. They sat together on the balcony, the cool breeze carrying the scent of flowers from the garden. The conversation flowed naturally, moving from light topics to deeper reflections about life, responsibility, and family. Armin, Mrs. Farah began hesitantly, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you do, not just for Lena but for us, for our family. Your presence makes a difference in ways I cannot fully express. Armin looked at her, sensing the sincerity in her voice. I only do what I believe is right, he replied softly. I care about Lena, and I want her to be safe and happy. That's all? Mrs. Farah smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond gratitude. She realized that while she could never impose her feelings on Armin, she cherished the connection they shared. His integrity, humility, and unwavering sense of duty had touched her heart in ways that went beyond simple admiration. Over time, Mrs. Farah's fascination with Armin became more apparent to those around her. Friends noticed that she spoke of him often, describing his courage, loyalty, and kindness. She would recount the story of the school event repeatedly, emphasizing not only his bravery, but also the way he had conducted himself with humility and respect. Armin, unaware of the depth of her feelings, continued to act with the same quiet integrity. He helped Lena with her studies, accompanied her on outings, and remained a constant presence in her life. He did not seek recognition or reward, but his actions naturally earned him the respect and admiration of everyone who witnessed them. Lena, while aware of her mother's growing attachment, remained focused on her own feelings of safety and trust. She knew that Armin's intentions were pure, and she valued the bond they shared. Yet she could sense the subtle tension between gratitude and deeper emotional attachment in her mother, a tension that would shape the dynamics of their relationship in the days to come. As Part 2 draws to a close, the foundation of a complex emotional triangle has been laid. Armin's courage and loyalty have not only protected Lena, but have also captured the admiration and affection of her mother. The story now moves into uncharted territory, where gratitude, emotional attachment, and moral responsibility intersect, setting the stage for challenges, choices, and revelations that will test the hearts and minds of all involved. As the days passed, the connection between Armin, Lena, and Mrs. Farah grew deeper, though it also became more complicated. Armin continued to act with the same quiet integrity and humility that had earned him respect from both mother and daughter. He remained focused on Lena's safety and well-being, always ready to step in when necessary, and careful not to overstep boundaries. Yet it was impossible to ignore the subtle changes in the household dynamics. Mrs. Farah's admiration for Armin had evolved into something more profound. She found herself looking forward to his visits, noticing the small details about him, the way he spoke with sincerity, the patience in his actions, and the kindness he extended to everyone around him. She realized that her feelings were no longer limited to gratitude. There was a longing, a desire for his presence to become a more permanent part of her life. She struggled internally, unsure how to express these emotions without disrupting the balance that had been established. One afternoon, Mrs. Farah decided to invite Armin for tea, wanting to spend time with him in a quiet setting. Lena was at school, giving the two adults space to converse without distractions. When Armin arrived, Mrs. Farah greeted him warmly, a hint of nervous excitement in her smile. They sat in the sunlit living room where the gentle hum of the city outside created a calm backdrop for their conversation. "Arman," Mrs. Farah began cautiously, "I hope I am not troubling you by asking you here again." Arman shook his head, smiling politely. "Not at all, ma'am. I always enjoy spending time with you and Lena." Mrs. Farah hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I wanted to talk to you about something personal. It is difficult to say, but I feel I should be honest with you." Armin looked at her attentively, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Of course. You can speak freely." She took a deep breath and began to share her thoughts. She spoke about her life after her husband's passing, the challenges she had faced raising Lena on her own, and the moments of loneliness that had crept into her life despite her successes. She described the admiration and trust she felt toward Armin, and how his presence had brought comfort and stability that she had not realized she needed. Armin listened quietly, his expression calm and respectful. He understood her words, but he remained careful to maintain the boundaries that had always guided his actions. "I am glad I can help," he said softly. "Lena is important to me, and it is only natural that I want to ensure she is safe and happy." Mrs. Farah nodded, but she could not hide the subtle longing in her eyes. "I know that, Armin, and I am grateful beyond words, but I cannot deny that my admiration for you has grown into something more personal. I value your presence so much that I find myself wishing you were a permanent part of my life, not just for Lena, but for me as well." Armin's heart sank slightly, not out of fear or anger, but from the realization of the complexity of the situation. He respected Mrs. Farah deeply and wanted to maintain her trust, but he knew that her feelings could create confusion if not handled carefully. "Ma'am," he began gently, "I am honored by your words, truly. But I must be honest as well. My focus has always been on Lena, and my actions have been guided by my desire to protect her. I care for you as well with respect and gratitude, but I am not sure I can return the feelings you describe in the way you hope." Mrs. Farah listened, her heart heavy but understanding. She had expected that her feelings might not be reciprocated, yet she could not help the emotions that had grown within her. She took a moment to compose herself, then spoke with quiet determination. "I understand, Armin. I do not wish to force you into anything. I only hope that you will continue to be a part of our lives, in whatever way you feel comfortable." The conversation marked a turning point. While Mrs. Farah had acknowledged her deeper feelings, she also respected Armin's boundaries. Armin, in turn, continued to act with integrity, ensuring that his actions were guided by care and respect, not by any desire to create confusion or tension. Meanwhile, Lena began to sense the subtle tension between her mother and Armin. She noticed the way her mother's eyes lingered on him during conversations, the quiet smiles exchanged, and the moments of thoughtful reflection that seemed to involve him. Lena felt a mixture of curiosity and unease. She trusted Armin completely, knowing his intentions were pure, but she also understood that her mother's growing attachment could create emotional complexity. One day, while walking home from school, Lena decided to speak with Armin privately. "Armin," she began cautiously, "I feel like my mother likes you, maybe more than just as a friend. I don't want things to be awkward, but I think you should know I notice it." Armin smiled gently, kneeling slightly to meet her eyes. "I appreciate your honesty, Lena. I care about your mother, of course, but my focus will always be on your safety and happiness. I will do my best to maintain respect and boundaries so that no one feels uncomfortable or confused." Lena nodded, feeling reassured by his words. She trusted Armin's judgment and integrity, and she knew that he would handle the situation with care. Yet she also realized that the emotional dynamics of their household had shifted, and that patience and understanding would be required from all sides. As the weeks continued, Mrs. Farah's subtle attachment to Armin became more apparent. She found herself inviting him to help with family matters, offering meals and including him in discussions about Lena's future. She spoke of him with friends and relatives, always emphasizing his courage, loyalty, and reliability. Her admiration was deep, but she remained careful not to pressure him or make him feel uncomfortable. Armand continued to fulfill his role as protector and guide for Lena. He accompanied her to school events, helped her with homework, and offered advice when needed. He never sought recognition or reward, and he maintained a calm and respectful demeanor in every interaction. His presence was a source of stability, not only for Lena but for Mrs. Farah as well, even as she grappled with her growing emotions. The complexity of the situation became more evident during family gatherings. Mrs. Farah would occasionally watch Armand with a mixture of admiration and longing, noticing the small details, the way he listened, the patience in his actions, the respect he showed to everyone. Armand, ever mindful of boundaries, acted with humility and care, ensuring that his presence remained comforting rather than overwhelming. Lena observed all of this with a growing awareness of human emotion and relationships. She began to understand that gratitude, admiration, and emotional attachment could create delicate dynamics that required careful navigation. She also appreciated Armand's steadfast integrity, knowing that he would not act in a way that would harm or confuse anyone. One evening, during a quiet conversation on the balcony, Mrs. Farah spoke again of her feelings, this time with more openness. Armand, I do not wish to make things difficult for you or Lena. I only want you to know that I value you deeply. Your presence brings comfort and strength not only to Lena but to me as well. Armand nodded, choosing his words carefully. I am honored by your trust and your words, ma'am. I will always do my best to protect Lena and to act with respect toward you. That is my priority. Mrs. Farah smiled softly, understanding that while her feelings might not be fully reciprocated, the bond they shared was meaningful and valuable. She resolved to channel her admiration into appreciation and support, rather than expectation or pressure. As part 3 comes to a close, the emotional landscape of the story has become more intricate. Mrs. Farah's attachment to Armand has grown, yet boundaries are respected. Lena remains secure and trusting, while Armand continues to act with integrity and care. The story now prepares to explore the tension, emotional challenges, and moral dilemmas that arise when admiration, gratitude, and personal feelings intersect. As time went on, the quiet admiration Mrs. Farah felt for Armand began to take on a more noticeable presence in their daily lives. She could not deny the fact that her thoughts often drifted to him when he was not around. She found herself imagining how life would feel with someone like him as a constant companion, not only for Lena but for herself. While she cherished the bond Armand had with her daughter, a part of her longed for more personal closeness, though she struggled with how to express it appropriately. Armand, as always, remained attentive but careful. He understood his role. Lena's safety and happiness were his top priority. At the same time, he recognized the subtle changes in Mrs. Farah's behavior. Her attention, though respectful, had become more persistent. She would engage him in long conversations, ask for his opinions on matters unrelated to Lena, and seek his company in moments that were clearly personal rather than purely social. One afternoon, Mrs. Farah invited Armand to her home under the guise of discussing Lena's upcoming school activities. When he arrived, she greeted him warmly, her smile brighter than usual. Armand, thank you for coming, she said softly. I wanted to go over some plans for Lena, and I value your advice. Armand nodded politely. Of course, ma'am. I am happy to help. As they sat together, Mrs. Farah began discussing Lena's schedule, her studies, and her extracurricular activities. But gradually the conversation shifted. Mrs. Farah's questions became more personal, asking about Armand's own life, his goals, and his experiences. She listened intently, her eyes reflecting admiration and a subtle yearning. Armand, she said gently, I cannot help but notice how devoted you are, not only to Lena, but to the people around you. It is rare to find someone with such loyalty and kindness. I find myself thinking, I wish someone like you could be a part of my life in a closer way, beyond just helping Lena. Armin paused, carefully considering his response. He understood the delicacy of the situation. "Ma'am, I am honored by your words," he said softly. "I care for you, and I respect you, but my priority has always been to ensure Lena's safety and happiness. I will always be here for her, but I must be careful not to overstep boundaries." Mrs. Farah nodded, though her eyes betrayed a hint of disappointment. She understood his position, yet she could not fully control the emotions that had grown within her. The mixture of admiration, gratitude, and longing was difficult to contain, and she resolved to express her feelings more openly, even if it created tension. Over the next few days, Mrs. Farah's behavior became more evident to Lena. The young girl noticed the subtle glances, the quiet smiles, and the moments when her mother seemed particularly attentive to Armin's presence. Lena trusted Armin completely, but she also understood that her mother's growing attachment could complicate the situation. One evening, Lena approached Armin privately. "Armin," she said cautiously, "I think my mother likes you, maybe more than just as a friend. I trust you, and I know you mean well, but I wanted to make sure you understand what is happening." Armin looked at her calmly, kneeling slightly, to meet her eyes. "Thank you for telling me, Lena," he said softly. "I care for your mother, but I must be careful with my actions. My focus will always be on your safety and well-being. I will continue to act with respect and maintain boundaries so that no one feels uncomfortable." Lena nodded, feeling reassured. She knew Armin's intentions were pure, and that he would navigate the situation carefully. Yet she could not ignore the emotional tension that now lingered in the household. Mrs. Farah, meanwhile, continued to struggle with her feelings. She admired Armin deeply, appreciating his integrity, humility, and unwavering sense of responsibility. But her admiration had grown into a desire for a closer connection. She longed for him to be not just a protector for Lena, but a companion in her own life, someone whose presence could provide comfort and stability. One afternoon, she decided to speak more openly. She asked Armin to join her for tea on the balcony, where the soft sunlight created a serene atmosphere. "Armin," she began hesitantly, "I have been thinking a lot about us, about your presence in our lives. You have been so devoted, so caring, and I cannot help but feel that I want you closer to me, not just as a helper for Lena, but as someone who is part of my life." Armin listened attentively, understanding the depth of her words. "Ma'am, I appreciate your honesty," he said gently. "Your feelings mean a lot, but I must remain careful. I care for you with respect, and I will always be here for Lena, but my actions must reflect my responsibilities and boundaries." Mrs. Farah's eyes reflected a mixture of longing and acceptance. She understood his position, yet she could not fully suppress her emotions. She realized that she needed to balance her desires with respect for Armin's integrity and Lena's trust. The following weeks were marked by subtle tension and careful navigation. Mrs. Farah continued to express her admiration through words, gestures, and attention, while Armin remained steadfast in his commitment to Lena. Lena observed all of this with growing awareness, understanding the delicate nature of human emotions and the need for careful communication and respect. During this period, Armin found himself reflecting on his role in their lives. He understood the weight of responsibility he carried, not only as Lena's protector but also as someone who had become an important figure in Mrs. Farah's emotional life. He realized that his actions could influence the dynamics of their household, and he was determined to act with integrity, ensuring that no one felt pressured or uncomfortable. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Mrs. Farah made a subtle but meaningful gesture. She invited Armin to sit closer, engaged him in conversation about shared experiences, and sought his opinions on matters beyond Lena's needs. The atmosphere was warm and respectful, yet the undercurrent of emotional attachment was unmistakable. Armin responded with his usual humility, participating thoughtfully in discussions and offering guidance where appropriate. He remained attentive to Lena, ensuring that her needs and feelings were prioritized, while also acknowledging Mrs. Farah's presence and perspective. His careful balance of respect and responsibility reinforced the trust and admiration that both mother and daughter felt toward him. As days turned into weeks, the emotional landscape continued to evolve. Mrs. Farah's feelings became more pronounced, yet she maintained a delicate balance, expressing admiration and longing without creating pressure or discomfort. Armin continued to act with integrity, navigating the complexities of human emotion with patience and care. Lena remained secure, trusting Armin completely and understanding the subtle dynamics between her mother and him. The stage was now set for further challenges. Mrs. Farah's attachment to Armin had grown beyond simple admiration, creating emotional tension that required careful navigation. Armin's commitment to integrity and responsibility remained unwavering, but he was aware that decisions and actions in the coming days would have lasting impacts on their relationships. In this intricate web of loyalty, admiration, and emotional attachment, each character faced internal and external challenges. Mrs. Farah had to reconcile her desires with respect for boundaries. Armin had to maintain his role with integrity, and Lena had to observe and understand the delicate balance of emotions around her. The story now approached a critical turning point, where emotions, moral responsibility, and human connection would collide in ways that tested courage, patience, and understanding. Time continued to flow, and the bonds between Armin, Lena, and Mrs. Farah became stronger, yet the emotional complexity of their relationships persisted. Armin remained committed to his role as Lena's protector, guiding her, supporting her, and ensuring that she always felt safe and cared for. Mrs. Farah, while deeply admiring Armin and wishing for a closer connection, had learned to channel her feelings into appreciation and support without crossing boundaries. Lena, wise beyond her years, had developed a keen understanding of the emotional dynamics at play, trusting Armin and maintaining a loving relationship with her mother. One morning, Mrs. Farah invited Armin to accompany her and Lena to a local community event. The day was bright and filled with the laughter of children, the chatter of families, and the scent of fresh flowers from the nearby park. Lena was excited, bouncing around with energy as she interacted with her friends. Armin walked beside her calmly, attentive but unobtrusive, making sure she was safe and comfortable. Mrs. Farah walked slightly behind, observing the young man with a mixture of admiration, affection, and subtle longing. Throughout the event, Armin's presence was quietly reassuring. He helped Lena navigate crowded areas, offered support when she tripped slightly on uneven ground, and intervened politely but firmly when strangers got too close. Mrs. Farah could not help but notice how naturally he handled every situation, the way he balanced care, attention, and restraint. His actions reflected a maturity and integrity that went beyond his years, and she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and admiration. After the event, the three of them sat together on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. The conversation turned to Lena's future, her dreams, and the path she wished to follow. Armin listened attentively, offering thoughtful advice when appropriate. Mrs. Farah observed the exchange, realizing how much Armin had become a part of their lives, how his influence had shaped Lena's sense of confidence, safety, and understanding of responsibility. Later that evening, as they returned home, Mrs. Farah decided to address the emotions that had been quietly growing for months. She invited Armin into the living room, a place where they had shared many thoughtful conversations before. Sitting, down with a calm but serious expression, she began to speak. "Armin," she said softly, "I have been thinking about everything that has happened between us over the past months. I admire you, and I appreciate everything you have done for Lena and our family. But I also need to be honest about my feelings. I have grown to care for you deeply, not just as a protector for Lena, but as someone I value in my own life." Armin listened carefully, understanding the gravity of her words. He remained calm and composed, aware that his response would influence the delicate balance of their relationships. "Ma'am," he began gently, "I am honored by your trust and your feelings. I care for you with respect and I will always be here for Lena. But I must be careful with my actions to ensure that everyone's well-being is preserved and that no one feels uncomfortable or pressured. Mrs. Farah nodded, her eyes reflecting both understanding and a quiet sadness. She realized that while her admiration and affection were genuine, she could not force Armin to feel the same way. Instead, she chose to focus on the gratitude and respect that had always formed the foundation of their connection. She resolved to channel her emotions into nurturing the bonds of trust, support, and family unity. Over the next several weeks, the household settled into a rhythm of respect, care, and understanding. Armin continued to support Lena in her studies, accompany her to social events, and provide guidance whenever needed. Mrs. Farah continued to appreciate and admire him, offering gestures of gratitude and encouragement while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Lena thrived in this environment, learning valuable lessons about trust, integrity, and emotional intelligence. One day, while Arman was helping Lena with a school project, Mrs. Farah joined them quietly, bringing tea and snacks. She observed the two of them working together, the natural rapport and mutual respect evident in every interaction. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction and relief, knowing that Lena was safe and happy and that Armin's presence was a positive influence on her daughter's life. As the evening progressed, Mrs. Farah spoke to Armin with a tone of gentle reassurance. "I am grateful for everything you do," she said softly. "Your presence brings stability and confidence to our lives. I want you to know that I respect your boundaries and appreciate the care you show every day." Armin smiled, feeling a sense of quiet pride and fulfillment. "Thank you, ma'am. I will always do my best for Lena, and I will continue to act with integrity and respect. That is my priority." The story now reached a stage of resolution. The emotional tensions that had developed over the past months had been addressed with honesty, respect, and understanding. Mrs. Farah's admiration and affection were acknowledged and channeled in a healthy way. Armin's role as protector and guide remained steadfast, and Lena's trust and sense of security were reinforced. In the following weeks, the family experienced moments of joy, learning, and shared experiences. They celebrated Lena's academic achievements, spent time together on outings, and engaged in meaningful conversations that strengthened their bonds. Armin's role, though carefully balanced, became integral to their daily lives, providing guidance, protection, and emotional support. Mrs. Farah, while still quietly aware of her personal feelings for Armin, found peace in the knowledge that the relationships she valued most were strong and healthy. She focused on nurturing the connection between Armin and Lena, understanding that his dedication and loyalty were gifts that shaped her daughter's life in positive ways. Lena, observing the care and integrity of Armin, developed a deep sense of respect and trust. She learned valuable lessons about loyalty, courage, and the importance of maintaining boundaries in relationships. She also began to understand the nuances of adult emotions, witnessing firsthand how admiration, affection, and respect could coexist without causing harm or discomfort. Arman, for his part, continued to act with humility and integrity. He navigated the complexities of the household with patience and care, ensuring that Lena's needs were always prioritized and that Mrs. Farah's feelings were acknowledged respectfully. His actions reinforced the trust and admiration that both mother and daughter felt toward him, creating a stable and supportive environment for everyone. As time passed, the family settled into a harmonious routine. They spent evenings together, engaged in meaningful conversations, and supported each other through challenges and celebrations alike. The bonds forged through courage, loyalty, and respect had matured into a foundation of trust, understanding, and emotional resilience. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony watching the stars, Mrs. Farah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. She thought about the day Armin had stepped in to protect Lena, the months of growing admiration and subtle attachment, and the moments of honest communication that had clarified boundaries and expectations. She felt gratitude, relief, and a sense of fulfillment, knowing that the relationships in her household were healthy, strong, and guided by integrity. Arman, observing the contentment on their faces, felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had fulfilled his responsibility with dedication, protected Lena with unwavering loyalty, and navigated complex emotional dynamics with care. He understood the significance of his role in their lives and took pride in the trust and respect that had been earned. Lena, looking up at the stars, felt a sense of safety and happiness that came from knowing she was surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her. She appreciated Armin's guidance, her mother's love, and the stability that had been created through courage, integrity, and understanding. As the story concluded, the three of them had grown together in ways that transcended simple admiration or gratitude. They had formed a family-like bond based on respect, loyalty, and emotional intelligence. Each character had learned valuable lessons. Mrs. Farah about balancing admiration and personal desire with boundaries. Armin about navigating complex relationships with integrity and care. And Lena about trust, responsibility, and the importance of healthy connections. In the end, the tale of courage, loyalty, and emotional growth reached a satisfying conclusion. The young man who had taken the blows to protect a child had become an enduring figure in their lives, not through obligation or expectation, but through genuine care, selflessness, and unwavering integrity. The mother, while recognizing her personal feelings, had learned to channel them appropriately, and the daughter had grown in confidence, security, and emotional understanding. The story left a lasting impression that true heroism is not measured solely by acts of bravery, but also by the integrity, humility, and respect one demonstrates in everyday life. It highlighted the power of honest communication, the importance of boundaries, and the strength that comes from loyalty and care. In the end, the bonds between Armin, Lena, and Mrs. Farah endured, rooted in trust, understanding, and mutual respect, a testament to the quiet heroism that shapes lives and nurtures meaningful connections.